Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to the 201st edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. And this is an impromptu edition of the show. Actually, as a matter of fact, tonight we were supposed to be recording Aaron's show, the year that was. He had something come up. We weren't able to record that. So Kyle Army and I decided we'll just go ahead and record something anyway.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's like when fucking Ultimate Warrior doesn't show up. By God, let's get Jake the Snake.
Yeah, so we need a stand-in. Where's Dwayne Gill? We need Dwayne Gill over here.
Christ. That was the worst thing. Worst and funniest was Survivor Series 98 when he's like the man, the myth, the legend.
Dwayne Gill. Let me.
Fuck, what a couple weeks it's been, man, in pro wrestling, dude. Like,
yes.
I don't understand. It's been interesting that we have the debacle that happened at SummerSlam, and then right after we get a Dark Side of the Ring on Bash the Beach 2000.
Bro,
dude, it felt like a very Russo-esque booking here lately, man. I mean, fuck it. Let's go with just the elephant in the room. SummerSlam. I understand why people are upset. You booked this as there was going to be no interference from anybody outside. But I don't know. I went into SummerSlam and I'm like, Jimmy's going to betray J.A. I've watched wrestling too long to know.
I think, and it's and that's what we were going to talk about, folks. We're going to talk about, because we don't talk about modern wrestling on the show a lot, because this is more of an old school wrestling podcast, and I do want to get into that. And I want to, before I say this, I always do before I say this, I want to say this. Kyle and I, and Aaron and Archie and all of us at this show anyway, are definitely more keen to be old school wrestling fans. The modern product is not as quote unquote appealing to us as it once was. Although I think we all, other than Aaron, still watch it more in passing than anything else. But I want to say that before I say this. The worst thing about modern pro wrestling, the fans. I'm on a campaign right now against toxic modern wrestling fans.
It's so stupid. I don't understand how overnight people go from this is the best storyline, the bloodline, which it is. It's honestly one of the best storylines they've had in a long time. But just because things didn't go the way you wanted them to go, now all of a sudden, and I almost wonder if it's almost our fault, because you think back to WrestleMania 30 when Daniel Bryan was going to be in the main event. Like, the fans were able to change Vince, Hunter, whoever, change their minds to put Daniel Bryan in. And now people think that if we bitch long enough and loud enough, they're going to change the story. But the problem is that, I'm sorry, I love Jey Uso, he's great, but he wasn't winning that fucking title.
No, and the other thing is, and this is where we can go back to Vince Russo and the Attitude Era, because I always talk about how the Attitude Era, when we lived in the Attitude Era at the time, because it was so different and so fast-paced and like nothing you'd ever seen before in wrestling. At the time, I thought it was cool as shit. I look back on the Attitude Era now and say that it is what ruined the business that I enjoyed. Because, first of all, what was born out of the Attitude Era was a different type of wrestling and a different type of storytelling that now people that are the age that we were then, now that's what they know as pro wrestling. So firstly, to what you were saying about the bloodline thing, and also I'll say this about the Cody thing. These modern wrestling fans have no appreciation for the slow burn, long-term storytelling.
Nope. Well, and here's the other thing. Like I read, and I understand that. Like I said, I'm not trying to be that guy that's bad mouthing Marks, and then it's like I read, listen, but I don't have the time to watch. So a lot of my time is my commutes to work, my commutes to the shop. I'm listening to stuff, and of course, I'm going to get their opinions. And a lot of times, they bring up good points. And one of the points they brought up was, we just saw that Brock is leaving till probably Royal Rumble, and everyone is flipping their shit. They're like, "Oh, I can't believe Brock." It's like, well, how can you miss him if he doesn't go away?
Yeah, he's an attraction, you
There's a
know.
there's a reason why when he hugged Cody and shook his hand, it meant something.
And I don't know if you read this or not, or saw that Triple H said this at the Scrum thing, but that was not planned. Brock did that all on his own. Cody said, "I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know if he was going to meat hook me or what."
But I mean, that's the respect that Cody Rhodes carries, you know. And that's the thing about it. I love LA Knight. How he's been able to catch on is amazing. But you know as well as I do, it's already started. People, oh, he's just like The Rock. Well, you know what they said about The Rock? He was just like, um, he was just like Jesse Ventura, or he was just like, you know, um,
It's like that Bare Naked Ladies song. It's all been done before.
is,
Everything is a copy of something. There was a Nature Boy before there was Ric Flair. Stone Cold Steve Austin. You look at the Stone Cold Steve Austin gimmick. It is a direct hybrid of the Sandman and Dr. D. David Schultz.
yep, exactly. But here's the other thing. How and I want to ask you this truly and honestly, in this day and age, how can you be a heel in pro wrestling? The best heel they have is Dominic Mysterio.
Yes.
Get booed. But the problem is, perfect example, Paul Heyman comes out and says, they're like, I'm the greatest manager of all time. What about Bobby Heenan? He's dead. And everyone's like, I can't believe it. And it's like, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, and I mean that's why even though he's not necessarily, and he probably is in my top 10 favorite modern wrestlers. He's not my favorite modern wrestler, but that's why I always give MJF the credit for being a real heel, because he'll literally make a baby cry.
That
He doesn't go on Twitter and talk about, and act different on Twitter than he does on. And I have a thing about that too. Like people say that, oh well, there goes kayfabe. Kayfabe got killed a long fucking time ago.
we know it, we know what it is. But I'm more concerned about the fact that we're living in a day and age now where on AEW, when you have a contract signing between MJF and Adam Cole, and Adam Cole signs it, the guy in the goddamn front rows, you didn't read it, you fucking moron. And like, fuck, man, we just want logic. And but like I said though, it I can understand why people are upset. Like you told everybody, no member from Bloodline's getting involved in this match on Sunday. And there's ways you could have done it. You could have had it where Roman was pissed that Solo got involved. Or better yet, how about you just have Roman beat Jay? 1, 2, 3. I love Jay to death, but it's the same thing as LA Knight, same thing as Punk or any other guy who has made it. Like you're getting to a point now where you're reaching that level. Like Jay's at that level, but we've seen what happens when you push something too quick on somebody with Roman.
Yeah, and the what do I say? I think that what has happened with that story is they know what they want to happen. And I think and I may or may not be wrong. I'm not in the booking meetings, I'm not on the writing team, but I think that their long game is probably, whether it's Cody or whoever it is, Roman drops the belt at WrestleMania 40. And they know what they want to do in between, but it almost seems like they were like, shit, we have the perfect plan, but it's just 3 months too we just have, like, if we could just lose 3 months, And it's like, I don't know what the answer is, because
Have an off season, or better yet, honestly, I don't understand why you can't be like, guess what? For 6 months we're gonna do Raw. 6 months we're gonna do SmackDown, and that's gonna be the show, and then you give the other crew a time off where they can rest and let. Like, there's ways to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, let's face it, Roman Reigns is the reason why he has the contract that he has is because man's also battling leukemia. I mean, and people still want to bitch that he's not on TV every week, and it's like he shouldn't be.
Right, exactly.
Like, I was trying to explain to my nephew who's big into wrestling, and I was like, dude, back in the territory, you would have like Ric Flair, and he would come around, or Harley Race, and he would come around maybe once, twice a year. In your local territory, you would have your guy. Let's say it's Daniel Bryan, and he's that guy, or his big guy is Damian Priest. Like, that's his favorite wrestler. He's 8, and So I'm like, imagine Damian Priest where he's booked, and then here comes the champion, and it's a 60-minute match, and oh boy, Damian Priest hit Flair with his finisher move, and as the bell's counting down the clock, it's 2, 1, 1, 2. Oh, he just fucking missed it. The time ran out. Like, Damian Priest or Ric Flair cheats.
That's a great bring up, because I thought when they unified the titles, and you have to look at it. People don't ever look at it. Everybody wants, it's the Scott Hall quote. It's one of the best quotes of all time. Everybody wants to call it the wrestling business until people start treating it like a business.
Yeah.
And I understand from a business perspective, WWE has television rights contracts with USA and with Fox, and USA wanted a champion on Raw. So that's why they created the World Heavyweight Championship for Seth Rollins. I get it. But what I wish could have ultimately happened was actually what you just brought up. I thought it would have been really sweet. The titles are united. You have one champion. Well, this month, the champion is he's on Raw, so he's going to be accepting a challenge from the champion on Raw, and he'll be on Raw for a few months. Or maybe for April and May, the champ's going to be on NXT and take challenges from there. And then when in the downtime, like you were talking about regional titles, your Intercontinental Champion, your US Champion, and your NXT Champion are the top people on their brand.
Yeah.
And the World Champion goes from brand to brand.
Well, and that was the way it was in the territories. Your United States champion or regional champion, he would wrestle the world champion, and he would just come up short. Where now that title means more, because our hometown guy could have beat Ric Flair if that son of a bitch didn't cheat. If he didn't, it's just like that. That's the point. Like, SummerSlam, you walked out going, man, fucking Jay would have had Roman if it just hadn't been for fucking Jimmy. And now I want to watch SmackDown to see what Jimmy's reasons for it were.
And what I kind of hope, it's not going to be that way because of the look on Jimmy's face. What I was kind of hoping, or what I was kind of thinking would be a cool layer to that story. Jimmy, why did you cost me the title? Why did you cost me to be the head of the table? And Jimmy saying, because I love you and I don't want you to wind up like him.
I can see that. That's good.
But I don't know if that's it, because he had like the I've just turned heel look on his face, And I don't know. I couldn't you couldn't read into it, like what's he supposed to be thinking. But that I think would be a cool way to go at it.
But see, and that's the thing. They very well could have had that be the idea. But when you have all this fan backlash, they're quick to sit there and say, oh, fuck, do we, because that's the thing now. Everyone's like, oh, they jumped the shark with this. They jumped the shark with this. I'm going to tell you something. I've been watching pro wrestling for damn near 30 years. And I can tell you I've seen them jump the shark a million times. And that's the thing. It's storytelling.
Yeah, I mean...
And here's the other problem. if you're going to sit there and say, like, we have a great story we have a great beginning, middle, and end, and you get to the point where you're like, fuck, we still have 3 months to go, might be time to cut some stuff out, scale it back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, the legendary stuff, like the people the stuff that these people would look at is some of the legendary stuff in the history of wrestling, went on for years and years. Example, I'll just use a prime example for anybody that's younger that's listening. And again, I know we don't have a lot of younger listeners because we do old school stuff, but Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair's story started at the end of Starrcade 83 because Dusty Rhodes showed up at Starrcade 83 and said either whether it's Harley Race or Ric Flair, I'd like to respectfully challenge them for the championship. And then Flair wins the title. Did him and Dusty fight immediately? No. You tell little stories. They kind of encounter each other throughout the year. And then by the end of the year, they have their match at Starrcade 84. And then, well, it was easy with the Horsemen because Dusty could feud with the other Horsemen. But then, I mean, for like 3.5 years, Dusty and Flair were intertwined. It was Dusty and Flair, Dusty and Flair, Dusty and Flair. In the WWF, Hogan and Andre. Look how long that story was. Long-term storytelling. You have to be able to know, you know what I mean? It's sometimes, and even during a long-term story that is good, you might have a little downtime like we have right now with this one. But you have to think about the long game.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm sorry. Guess what? Yes, SummerSlam is your big pay-per-view, but going out of SummerSlam, really, it kind of dies down. I mean, yeah, you have Survivor Series, but really, the fuck does Survivor Series mean at this point? I mean, really, you know,
it's just another show.
Yeah, between the Elimination Chambers and the Money in the Banks and everything else, like, it's just people don't want to see teams of fives striving to survive because it's like, yeah, okay. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand why you can't. If it was me, I would dumb down the pay-per-views and just show house shows. Say, hey, we're gonna have a premium live event. Oh my God, Roman Reigns is defending his world title at this house show. We're gonna bring you live coverage of it.
Yeah,
like when they the Beast in the East with Brock and whoever. What was it? Was it Kofi?
Kofi.
Yeah. But the problem is that people are too concerned about what's going on backstage or what's going on in front of you. Like, can you imagine that? Can you imagine going in and watching Star Wars or watching the next Marvel movie, and you're instead of going like, well, man, fuck Thanos, he dusted half the universe. They're like, I can't believe they booked Thanos to do, you know?
What? Oh, I'm going to get back to the fans for a minute because as a Star Wars fan and a wrestling fan, I have the unfortunate burden of being in pools with the most toxic fucking fans on the planet, the most hate watching, toxic. If you don't like something, why are you fucking watching it? That's just like the all right. I like Jim Cornette. I've always been a fan of Jim Cornette. I like Jim Cornette's podcast. Well, I don't listen to Jim Cornette Experience anymore because I don't care to hear him talk about politics and shit. But the drive-through where he answers questions, those shows will be like 4.5 hours long. It takes me an hour and a half to listen to it because I only want to hear him talk about why does he spend 3 hours? I know why. From a business perspective, it's because he gets listeners that way because it's all his toxic listeners that want to shit on the modern product.
Well, and it's also too because, like I said, when you have like Brian Last and stuff, where on YouTube, it's, you know, they can Monday morning they can come back and say Jim Cornette, you know, rages on politics, and then they have a 15-minute digestible bite for YouTube that people can listen to on their way to work. I mean, that's kind of what WWE is now. Is like, yeah, you can still watch it live, but like a lot of it has to be like the day after because
Oh yeah, I don't other than PLEs, I guess we call them now. Other than PLEs, I don't watch anything live anymore. I just let it be over, and then I watch what I want to watch out of the. Because I don't want. There's what. Okay, you've got Raw, which is 3 hours. SmackDown is 2 hours. NXT is 2 hours. Dynamite is 2 hours. I'm up in the air whether I watch that every week or not.
I don't watch. I watch Collision just because
Collision's 2 hours.
because I cannot stand anymore the Young Buck and Kenny Omega's style of how because it's a tale of two shows. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off, but it's
No, that's fine.
and I'd love to see what the viewership is on both because that's the problem with AEW is you have a serious threat, I'll say, because I think they were smart. AEW Fight Forever. They are now updating, like they gave people a chance to learn the game and play it. And now they're putting in a battle royale mode for Stadium Stampede. And it's a multiplayer online. It's brilliant. You've got some smart people back there, and how could you not with everyone that's there? But you're letting Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, I'm sorry, they shouldn't be management.
Yeah, and
I really think that was Cody's thing, is Cody didn't want to be management anymore. He set the company up, and he wanted to step away.
I think to be perfectly honest with you, and by the way, this is my favorite kind of show. I love freeform shit where we just talk about shit and just go. So don't ever feel bad about cutting me off because I'm having a blast. But I think Cody's ultimate, when he left WWE, he envisioned himself back in WWE.
Oh, absolutely.
That was his intention from the very beginning. Whatever he had to do between leaving and coming back, but he did the smart thing in that he was kind of like Drew McIntyre. Okay, I've been released. I'm going to go out and make myself such a star that they have to take me back.
Well, and you heard Vince when he had that podcast with Stone Cold. He talked about Shane wanting a raise and Vince not giving him one, and he went out and got a bricklaying job where he made more money. And Vince is like, I was super proud of him. Then he went out and I'm sure the conversation had where Vince is like, Cody, it's time for you to come home, pal. You've proven yourself, and now you're the star that you should have been, and I'm proud of you. Come home and let's make you, And if I'm Cody, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, he doesn't have to deal with clown shoes anymore.
Yep.
He doesn't have to deal with, and that's always been my biggest problem with AEW. I'm not a huge fan. It's fine. There are things about it that I'd like. There's people that wrestle there that I enjoy watching. But overall, AEW is just people say it's WCW. It's not necessarily WCW. It's almost more ECW. And the reason I say that is because there's so much potential there, but it's terribly mismanaged.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's because you have Tony Khan, who, again, Tony seems like a hell of a nice guy. And I'm gonna say this right up front. I will give the man his credit. He has done everything he can to iron over, the ill will of the Hart family, to allow Owen to now be honored and respected like he should be. He has done a lot for like Jon Moxley, and he's gone above and beyond. But he's still a mark.
Thanks, guys.
And because he doesn't know the wrestling business. And
oh yeah, he is absolutely, he's like in the history of the business, he's the ultimate money mark, because there's been a lot of money marks over the years, folks, like a Herb Abrams or somebody like that. Tony's like the most successful money mark because his father, their fortune is endless. So he, essentially he's like a guy like Chris Jericho, for example. Chris Jericho in public puts over Tony Khan. But I guarantee you, having worked for Vince McMahon as long as he did, Jericho looks at Tony Khan as a clown shoe.
Oh, yeah.
But he also, and the minute AEW would go out of business, Jericho would be back in the WWE next Tuesday. Don't let him fool you.
Well, see, and that's the thing that's interesting is the problem and the difference is we are watching pretty much what would have happened if Ted Turner had walked into WCW back in 1990 and been like, "Oh, I own the company, so now I'm going to run it."
Yeah.
Gone out and got somebody, and that's the thing about it. Like, you had guys like Arn Anderson, you had these guys who knew what the hell they were talking about. He should have gone out and got somebody. I'm not saying Eric Bischoff. I'm not saying, but someone like that could have run the fucking company, who knew how to deal with pro wrestlers, how to deal with.
That's the most ironic thing is one of the first people he talked to when he was planning on starting AEW was Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette has highlighted on his podcast that he and Tony had conversations, and he told Tony, these are the kind of things that I would kind of consulting him. And then, of course, they made Cornette sign an NDA, but that was one of the first people he went to. And then essentially the gist is Cornette doesn't want to travel or work full time anymore. So,
but here's the thing, though: we live in a day and age where, like, right now, you and I are doing a fucking podcast online.
Yeah, you could just Zoom.
And that's the thing for anybody that wants to bitch and complain because Jim Cornette there. Well, fuck you. Like, the dude paid his dues. Don't you think that maybe, just maybe, the man deserves to be able to sit in the comfort of his own home and book fucking pro wrestling?
It's totally off base, but you just saying that made me. I saw this news. I saw this thing on the news the other day about how Zoom was calling its workers back to the office. And I was like, why the fuck does Zoom have an office?
I don't know. Maybe
literally their whole business is not to have an office.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I'm sure you have discovered through your ventures, and I have mine, that, like, you don't really need an office anymore. You can pretty much take care of everything on a laptop, on an iPad. Like, we're in a new day and age. And I understand it's scary, but, like...
Well, just like, and I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go into details, but Kyle and I have had to do stuff with paperwork here lately. Mm-hmm. We haven't had to meet in person once. You can just do everything on the internet now.
And it's super convenient because, like I said, I'm constantly going, and I'm sure you're the same way. Between the wife and the kids and everything else, like, it just, I mean, that's where we're at. We are in a point now, and I don't want to talk politics, but we're at a point now where you have to constantly work and constantly be going to try to survive. So yeah, it's definitely a lot better. But like I said, I don't understand. You had fucking Jake the Snake. You had
like oh shit, like you said, Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko.
You had a man who has, for the last 20 years, worked directly with the WWE and Vince McMahon, because that was the thing that I don't know if it clicked with me the other day, but it's just something with watching, like, the I don't know. Did you watch the interview with him and Pat McAfee with Vince?
Yes.
It really got with me where he was just like, look, you could be a pro wrestler and you can wrestle in a smoky auditorium, or you can be a WWF superstar, pal, and I'm going to make fucking toys and cartoons. And he was smart, because now WWE and UFC are about to merge. And we are at a new cusp. What did you think of Shayna Baszler versus Ronda Rousey?
I actually enjoyed it.
For a match that was... I watched that and I said, you know what? If this is what happens in the next 10 to 15 years with pro wrestling, I won't be mad.
Right.
It was, yes, it was choreographed, but it looked good. It looked like each other was trying to win the match. There wasn't a bunch of acrobatics. There wasn't a bunch of bullshit that.
That's gonna be an interesting layer to pro wrestling now, and MMA. With those two companies being under the same umbrella, it's going to be so much easier for people to go back and forth between the two. You know, if there's a fighter that wants to wrestle, or if there's a wrestler that wants to fight, it's going to be so much easier for people to go back and forth between the two genres.
But not even just that, but it's just like Lesnar. You can have somebody in their younger years go into UFC, come out, can you imagine Conor McGregor had come out of UFC, he goes into WWE, and they're able to market behind him and everything, how big he'd be?
Yeah, and he's already a fucking promo.
Well, and that's the thing about it. Excuse me, again, I got back to, like I was telling my nephew, I was like, everyone talks about pro wrestling being fake and being fixed and being rigged and everything else. But if you go back and look at the history of it, back with George Hackenschmidt, like the reason why they did it was because they're like, why are we beating the fuck out of each other for money when we could work with each other and not put the other one out? I don't need to break your arm. And that's how it started. And now it's become this derogatory statement where I'm glad. I don't like watching UFC because I don't want to see people beat the fuck out of each other.
Yeah, and I mean that's how I am about it's different because I couldn't fight in the UFC. That's not what I'm saying. But that's how I am about like super gory hardcore wrestling, like mud show bullshit,
Yep.
like guys whacking each other with light tubes and stuff. To me, I know there are people that think that for some reason there's something special about that. But you and I could literally smack each other with light tubes.
Well,
like, there's no talent involved.
No, but it's the New Jack approach. And that's where like New Jack was one of the smartest workers ever because that motherfucker made you believe he was real. When he walked out there, you never knew he was going to stab his opponent.
Right.
But the problem is that when everybody's going out and getting smashed with light tubes, it's like, okay.
And there is a distinct difference, ladies and gentlemen, because people would say, well, what about Mick Foley? There is a 1,000 times difference between what Mick Foley did and what someone like Ian Rotten does. Or Zandig, or these fucking CZW guys.
Here's the thing. Mick Foley did everything that he did to put over the other wrestler. Not to prove the tough guy.
Yes, and when he did a spot, it was important,
mm-hmm.
and it was impactful, and it was part of a story. It wasn't just 30 minutes of. By the time you're done, the ring looks like a dumpster. Like for instance, my favorite hardcore match ever is Foley and Orton, because if you watch the match, it is structured where, yes, there are thumbtacks, yes, there's barbed wire, but everything is there for a reason and to make sense. And the whole purpose of the match was to advance Randy Orton as a character.
Well, it's because everyone looked at Randy Orton as a prissy little, good-looking dude, and they're like, you needed to see his dad. You needed to see Bob Orton Jr. in him. And when you had that, and you see him, because at first, like when he gets thrown on those thumbtacks, you're like, yeah, you prissy son of a bitch. And then you're like, well, fuck, this motherfucker's tough. Like he's still fighting back. It's
best sell job ever, by the way, when he hits those thumbtacks and it's like he's being murdered and he can't figure out what the hell is going on. And oh, it's so fun.
Well, and that was the thing too, because he did the exact same thing for Hunter. Because up until Royal Rumble 2000, that street fight is one of my favorite matches because they single-handedly made Triple H that night.
Yeah.
Because he looked aggressive. It was the same thing with him and Shawn. Mind Games in '96. Like, he gave Shawn that killer side that Shawn needed to make people believe. And
by the way, folks, he also made The Rock.
mm-hmm.
He also rejuvenated a stagnant Undertaker by taking that bump off the helmet. Mick Foley gave so much to so many. And I think that's because he had the perfect role model in emulating Terry Funk.
He carried, mind you, 1999 at the height of Steve Austin. The height of Steve Austin. And even The Rock. Go back and watch that Raw where he wins that title. He gets a bigger eruption than Austin did. Like, it says something. He was able to and then once he had it, he was able to give it to and rub it off on everybody else. The same thing with Brock. Like, Brock knew. Just like Undertaker was willing to pay it forward to Brock, Brock was willing to pay it forward to Cody. Because Cody's going to be their guy for the next 20 years.
Yep. And that's going back to what we were talking about. It's funny because we get on these rants and we get away from what we're talking about, but coming back to it, that was as far as the long-term storyline goes, the long-term storytelling. Roman beat Cody at WrestleMania, and people were like, well, that's, they acted like that was it. And it's like, no, there's a long game here. And along comes the feud with Brock, which when that started, people were like, oh, they're just going to job Cody out to Brock. He's just going to be Stardust again. Nope, sure didn't. It also added another. And I guarantee you that Cody Rhodes and Triple H, and if Vince was involved, I'm sure if Brock was, then he probably was involved. But they're all looking at this from the beginning going, this is where we're at. This is where it ends, and everybody's happy.
Well, and that was the thing. I think Cody walked in, because if Cody had walked in and beat Roman, fans would have turned on him in 3 months. But Cody walked in, lost to Roman, and then Cody tore his pec. And then Cody gave you one of the best Hell in the Cell matches that I've ever seen with one fucking arm, and proved to everyone how tough he really is. That, and just like that with Roman, because we're going to get to the point now, and that's where I said, like, about Paul Heyman, like, we're going to see Roman become the fucking nastiest, dirtiest, meanest fucking heel over the next 6 months. Because by the time we walk into WrestleMania 40, people are ready for Cody to fucking win that title.
And then it's going to be time. Cody wins the title. And then it's finally going to be time. Because I think that ultimately, after all of this is said and done, obviously Roman will go away for a minute. And when he comes back, he will finally be the babyface that Vince always told us he is.
Well, and here's the thing.
At the end of the day, that fucking Vince McMahon is always right.
Here's what's going to happen. Mark my words, Nate. I'm saying it right now. Because as good of a babyface that Cody is, the better of a heel he is. And imagine him basically walking in there and being kind of what Roman is now, but like where he defends it every night and nobody can beat it. He becomes the Cody that he was in AEW. And imagine if you have, he does dastardly shit, like he beats the shit out of the Usos. And here comes the fucking Roman Reigns, the tribal. That crowd's going to come unfucking glued.
Yep.
I mean, again, pro wrestling's not hard, folks.
It's like Raven said. Yeah, I can't do a good Scotty Levy like Chad Austin. Yeah, kid. Yeah. Anyway, Scott Levy, Raven. He said, there are 7 storylines in pro wrestling.
Yep.
You can tell them with different people, and you can approach them from different angles. But there are 7 storylines in pro wrestling. Fighting over a girl, fighting over a title. We were friends and we broke up. Blah blah. And he's just like, he runs down them, but he's like, there are 7 storylines. Wrestling ain't hard. He says, you know who his favorite person to wrestle was? Sandman. He's like, all I had to do was go out, and Sandman just bumped around me. Like, I didn't even have to do anything.
Like, mark my words, like Dominic Mysterio, this is ending with Rhea beating the shit out of Ray. This is ending with Rhea Judgment, but in some way, like, those two are coming back together, but it's just going to be enough for when the fans are going to be, and it's brilliant. Mm-hmm. But once he does, I'm excited to see the crop of talent that we have coming up.
Absolutely. The future is bright, especially in WWE.
I hope we see MJF go to WWE, because goddamn, can you imagine them behind it? I think you're going to see Punk back in WWE. I really do.
Everybody winds up back there. It's the NFL. I mean, it's the NFL of the WWE is, and I don't try to shit on AEW, because the parts of AEW I don't like, just like WWE, I just don't watch them anymore. So I always pray for AEW to be successful, even if at that time for like a month I haven't even watched it. I don't ever want it to fail, because I want the wrestlers to have as many places to work as they can. But it's a pipe dream for anybody to think AEW would ever touch WWE.
I wouldn't be surprised if WWE doesn't have a hand in AEW, just because it's smart. It's creating another place, like you said, for people to go and work. I mean, that's the thing. Everyone talks about Vince like he's a bad guy with Brett, but fucking Vince is like, go make $3 million.
Yeah, $3 million, pal. Go do it.
Yeah, like,
why wouldn't you?
Fuck, man, and
that's more than I bought this company for.
And I'll say this: with Vince being pretty much all but gone from WWE, he's told everyone for years that it's bigger than him, bigger than anybody. And I want to say this: I think it's kudos to the man for. I think he realized if he didn't sell it, he was going to kill it.
Yeah,
I think he said, "I need to get this away from me, where I don't have any fucking control."
And I just want it to be on record, and it is on record, because it's somewhere where I recorded it. And I know you were present when I said it. Sometime in the year, I believe it was either 2018 or 2019, I said on this show, the moves that WWE are making in their business, the things that Vince McMahon is doing with his company, are all with the intent to sell it.
Yep. You sold it for everybody else.
Because I've worked for corporations. I've worked for retail companies. I've worked for lots of companies that have merged. GameStop. I watched GameStop go through its evolution. I watched a bunch of record stores go through their evolution. I knew at some point that was his ultimate goal. It was never going to be, and he's smart in that he was never just going to pass it to the kids. Because just passing it to the kids, and again, this is where we're talking about, folks. There's wrestling, and it's the wrestling business. From a business standpoint, Shane, I don't know how involved Shane is anymore or what his stake is anymore. But anyway, Hunter, Shane, Stephanie, the grandkids, all of them stand to make far more money now than they would have if he would have just given them WWE.
Even just that, but like Steph, she can go home and be with her kids. Hunter can do,
because they're all going to get stock in this new company.
Oh, and here's the thing: like, it truly is. Vince McMahon has made WWE Disney. It's all he ever wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he
I just read today that Triple H isn't going to be when the company, and people were like, "Oh, they're fucking him." It came out that when Endeavor and WWE merge, Triple H isn't going to be part of the board of directors. Do you think Triple H gives a shit whether or not he's going to be part of the board of directors of a new company? It's business. He's going to have his stock. He's going to have his shares. He's still going to have his job.
Well, and that was the thing that I like. They pretty much, if you read the information, they were like, "We want you to be in charge of WWE, not in the fucking stock." Because if you ask Hunter, he'll tell you, "I don't want to be there. I don't want to be in the boardroom."
Yeah, he's never wanted to be there anyway. He just did it because the family needed him and wanted him to do it.
He wants Vince's job. He wants to be the guy at Gorilla running it all because and Vince saw that in Hunter. Like, that's the thing about it. I don't know. It's very interesting, but it's very cool to know that it's going to continue on. And I mean, really and truly, like, Endeavor, it's smart.
It's very smart.
I'm excited to see what changes they're going to make because I think that we might see new platforms for Raw and SmackDown and
you know what? Honestly, I know originally that was one thing I was wrong about. I thought that the WWE was going to get purchased, was going to sell themselves to either Fox or NBC just because of the TV thing. But now I look back at it, or I look on it now, and of all the companies that they could have merged with, Endeavor's the perfect choice because it's a company that understands competitive fighting.
Yep.
So it almost feels like you would be instead, like if they would have got bought out by Disney, then Disney would have been all about making it into more cartoony, whereas as somebody like Endeavor is going to be looking at it more in the sports realm. And it's this Vince is a fucking genius.
Well, and two, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have UFC and we have WWE. It's one price, and you get both pay-per-views, all fights, all premium. It's smart. It's that's why Vince is successful. That's why he's been successful ever since, regardless of the man behind the the force. And that's really the thing too that I don't know. What do you think? I don't want to just end on the, but do you think that David Benoit is going to get a fair chance?
I think David Benoit, excuse me. I think David Benoit David Benoit will never work for WWE. He possibly could get a fair chance in AEW. I think that WWE just looks at that name as such a stain on their history. And it's not fair to him. It's absolutely not fair to him. I'm not saying that it is. I just think that from their standpoint, they just look at it as such a stain on their history that I just don't think that they would that it's ever going to happen. But he could or AEW definitely.
I hope so. I hope he gets the chance. And that's the other thing about it. Maybe and that's like I tell anybody who is an artist or anything that we want to do in life. The cream always rises at the top. I don't care what is there to hold you back. If you want it bad enough and you're good enough, they're going to come calling. I hope because like I said, it's nice to see like the Mysterios and the Guerreros still in it. And
yeah, and I feel bad for him because it's the sins of the father's thing,
It is.
It sucks for him to have to pay for the sins of his father.
Well, fuck it too, and it's almost like even with Brian Pillman, he got called up to NXT, finally, but like, hopefully, the worst thing they could do is package him as Brian Pillman Jr., the son of Brian Pillman, let him kind of forge his own path.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we sign off, because the beer is filling my bladder, there will be piss soon from your host. I did want to end it, not trying to be depressing, but I did want to end because I want to mention it because it's one of my favorite TV shows. It's one of my favorite characters. As we record this evening, they have reported on the passing of Johnny Hardwick, who played Dale Gribble on King of the Hill. And all I can say is, man, Johnny Hardwick, thank you for thank you for Wingo. I say Wingo like 5 times a day. Cha-cha-cha-cha. I mean, just one of the great characters in comedic history, voiced by this guy, and he passed away at the age, I think, 64. Very sad news. I am such a King of the Hill guy, and
that's the thing about it. Like, so I don't know what all I'm sure he's done other things too, because that's the thing about voice actors, man. You don't realize just how many characters they do, and they've voiced, like, I remember when I found out that fucking Luke Skywalker was Joker.
Yeah.
So, man, that's sad. I know that they were talking about doing like a
Oh no, the reboot is on. The reboot is on. It is confirmed. I don't know if he had recorded anything for it yet, because I don't know. To be honest with you, I know that it was greenlit. I know that everybody that was still alive was coming back. Obviously, Brittany Murphy wasn't, because she's passed away since, to do Luann. But everybody else was back on board. But I don't know how far they got in production, so I don't know where we land with that. But
and here's going to be the interesting thing about it with AI, and that's the other interesting thing with this whole strike and stuff. We could see AI generated voice for these.
Yeah, I mean they could probably take everything he ever said as Dale Gribble and put a fucking script together.
You can literally, I've seen bots and AI that has written pay-per-views for pro wrestling. They're not bad. They just take everything and concise it. But
look, I've been using it in real estate.
Yeah,
like I go to Chat GPT, for something, and I'm like, all right, I want to say this about this house or this about me as a realtor, and I just type in a few little things I want, and then there it is. And I just take out, I take out the stuff that shouldn't be there, like nestled by a creek or whatever, I take that out. But yeah, it's fucking crazy what this shit can do now. I think we might be almost over as a civilization.
That's the thing. When does it become self-aware, Nate?
Well, and that's why that's part of the excuse me, the Writers and the Screen Actors Guild. That's one of their biggest things right now, why they're striking, because they're saying we have nothing in our contracts, nothing in anything addressing the fact that we can literally be replaced by a computer at this point. You could be like, write me a movie about a dog going to space, and now you've got a script.
Yep. It's scary, because the more we rely on it, it's a brave new world. I mean, this is a weird conversation, but I just happened to see on Reddit today that now we're getting to the point where people are having issues with people taking their photos and making AI nude pictures of them. It's a scary world where we're at. Like, for me as an artist, it's one of those things. If I type in a tattoo of an anchor, did I draw that, or did I have? But at the same time, if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I want a zombie woman, riding a skateboard," I can get an idea and draw
that. That's what I was about to say. It's such a mixed bag of good and bad.
The gray area.
The technology, it's like, on one hand, you're like I just said, oh, that makes me writing up a description of a house or whatever so much easier. I don't have to sit here for 20 minutes and think of adjectives and blah, blah, blah. But then on the other hand, I'm like, oh God, the robots are taking over. I don't know what you don't know what to do.
No, and that's the thing. And I don't know, man. To me anymore, I'm just like, well, I guess if aliens are real, AI is shit. This sucks.
The only medium that is ever accurate, 100%, no matter how long it takes, folks, is science fiction. Science fiction is always right. Science fiction consistently predicts the future, and
Because you're going off of what we basically are as a human civilization. I mean, that's, but, well, like you said, the beer is flowing.
yes,
I just want to end this thing. If nothing else, it takes absolutely and costs absolutely nothing to believe in somebody. You throw a fucking stone, you're going to hear why not. So be that person that's like, yeah, man, do it.
absolutely. And if you have, if you have like for podcasting or Kyle as an artist or whatever, if you have a friend that has a business or that is trying something, that is doing something, the absolute best thing you can do, the best thing you can do is not to give them money. The best thing, and obviously you could give them money if you're supporting their business, but what I'm saying is the best thing you can do is support them, tell people about them. Let's help each other,
Dude, my biggest thing. I'm gonna tell you, we truly are in this together, and until people realize that I don't care what race, religion, sex, whatever it is, we're all the same. We all got bills to pay. We all got, we're just trying to make it through this crazy fucking life. So I'd rather work together and support people. Fuck, it costs the same. It takes the same amount of, energy. So that's my thing, man. Just believe in them people, man.
Well, Kyle, it's been nice to sit down and have an impromptu conversation with you.
Like I said, I'm hoping to be on more. Like I said, hopefully once things kind of settle down a little bit. But yeah, like I said, hopefully we can get together soon, maybe for the Rumble.
Yeah, and
all of us again.
We have we're going in other directions with the network now too. The We Can't Wrestle podcast still exists. Reliving the Extreme still exists, but we're going to start doing more non-wrestling stuff, kind of getting ourselves out of the box. There's a Sopranos podcast coming to the network.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
We're gonna do a podcast about the show Justified. Kyle and I are going to be working on something as far as a tattoo-oriented podcast coming up. So lots of things coming up here on the network that I'm very excited about to get us out of the and we love wrestling, but you can only talk about wrestling so much.
I'd love to do something with comics. I'd love to do, so that's the thing too. If you have any ideas, like the fans out there, man, you want something you want to listen to, I don't care if you want us to talk about goddamn spoons. If there's enough people that want to know about,
then so be it. But Thank you again, Kyle. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This week's edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast brought to you by Dale's Dead Bug.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Dale Gribble.
Yes.
And we'll see you next week, everybody. Have a great week.